All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Noise Signals, Stories, and Spicy Takes, the show where we dig into the stories of the people shaping the future of app based computing with a special focus on mobile. I'm your host, Matt Klein, co founder and CTO of Bitdrift, as well as the founder of Envoy Proxy. Each episode will talk with engineers, founders, and technical leaders who transform the way their companies build and understand what's happening inside their systems. We'll dig into the challenges, the breakthroughs, the lessons learned, and wrap it all up with their hottest takes. So let's dive in. Today, I am thrilled to have with us Dillon TenBrink, who is a distinguished engineer at the Home Depot based in Austin, Texas. He spends his time building large-scale platforms, modernizing cloud and edge systems, and helping teams use AI and automation to work better at the scale and pace of retail. He's passionate about practical engineering, growing people, and turning complex systems into something teams enjoy using. Welcome, Dillon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Matt. And this has been a fantastic podcast to listen to, so I'm excited to be a guest on it today.
Awesome. Thanks again. I'm very excited to have you just because I'm excited to learn about what it means, to do mobile and computing in the retail world. But before we get there, how I like to start is for someone in your type of position, I would just love to learn about your career, how you got started in computing, and just, I don't know, tell us how you got to where you are today.
It's always been a lifelong sort of journey of curiosity. And it's been a wild ride. Like, I'm not even sure I can account for it if you had written it into a story. I was a farm kid growing up in Central California. Technology was not our jam, but for some reason, these things called computers and at the dawn of personal computing kind of spoke to me. And I was always a tinkerer, whether it was the tractor out in the yard or out on the three-wheeler in the yard. And so computers kind of came naturally as like, here was this experimental thing that I could play with. I could write code and create things out of nothing. And in that, I found a calling. I found a passion. And so when you talk about like how I got into a career, I mean, I've never really thought of it as that way. I come to work every day and have just been so excited to explore the space and learn something new. So it's always been for me about continuous life learning. That's how I sort of stumbled into the .com era and was in the Bay Area at the right time and the right place in my career, and worked for a couple startups out there and learned a ton about how that environment works and the world of venture capital and the world of startups. And it was, I'll tell you, as a 19-year-old growing up in Silicon Valley, like it was amazing. It was life defining. From there,
yeah,
I've worked
did you move? So I guess first, what did your farm grow? Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I mean, we did a mix of things. So in Central California, big agricultural belt. So we had everything from almonds to alfalfa to cows and horses on the land. And, it's a typical sort of farm situation. It's my family, my grandparents live next door, big acres of wide open spaces, lots of room to sit out and dream and think about things. And,
I mean, one thing that I think is interesting, I realize we're getting wildly off topic, but I mean, in modern farming, how much technology is involved in it, right? And like, is your family still in the farming business?
They are not, but if they were today, I've got to imagine they would need a CTO or something. Now, right? Because technology has advanced so much in the years as to be permeating everything that we do, including farming.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading recently around like the modern tractors and how, they're GPS controlled and now they have artificial intelligence in them and all of these different things. It just seems pretty amazing. Anyway, so you left the farm. Did you go to school in the Bay Area? Is that how you wound up there?
I didn't. I wound up there because of some really great mentors in my life that said, like, Dillon, you have a passion for this. Come do this. At that time, I'd graduated high school and I had the option to go to college or go to work at a startup. And the startup was frankly more interesting to me. It's a great question when you ask about like, how did I get where I am in my career? I actually never went to college. I have done this all outside of using allies, of using just hard work, of using coaches and mentors and surrounding myself with people who could educate me on the business, on technology, on how to create stories, on how to create visions and get them into people's heads. So it's one of the things that when I talk to junior engineers who are trying to think about how they want to address, how they want to grow their career, it's like, it's not necessarily about the diploma on the wall or the work that you did in your 20s. It's about how you're defining yourself as a person day to day.
Yeah.
So my path did not take me through college. It took me through startups. So, it's sort of that world and learning from some of the best and brightest in the industry at the time. And both the great things and the terrible things
Yeah.
about startups as well.
Do you, because it's funny, like, you never know what the alternative universe would have been. And
Mhm.
I have felt many times that I should not have gone to college and I should have done what you did. And obviously, it's hard to know what would have happened and whether my life would have been different or the same. And I'm just curious, having looked back at now a very long career, I don't know, do you think that you made the right decision at that point?
I think so. And you're right. It's hard to judge. Like my path coming out of high school was I was going into communications. That was my sort of like technology was an interesting hobby, but communications was the reasonable job, right? I wrote articles for the school paper. I did play by play on the radio and was really involved in that. And I thought, man, I'm going to go get a communications degree and be in sports or broadcasting or journalism of some sort because I just love the storytelling aspect of it. But there was this other thing out there, this
Yeah.
technology thing that was happening in the late 90s. And it was like that was an exciting place to be where, at the startups that I worked at, they fed us lunch and dinner or slept on the floors in there. We were united, 60 people united on a singular mission, and there was such a collectiveness to it. And that was at a time in my life where it made a lot of sense to go do that and to pursue that passion and see if we could make something successful.
Do you feel, I guess, so you learned everything that you knew on the job, obviously. I don't know. Do you feel that, learning some of the computer science stuff on the job, is that more or less useful than learning it in school? I actually don't know. I mean, it's like in
Yeah,
some
I don't.
ways, I feel like on the job is better. So it's just, I don't know. It's interesting to talk to you because I feel like your life took the path that my life could have taken if I
It
if
could
I
have
did a
been.
different way. Yeah.
It's interesting too because we recently had an event here at my Austin building. It's one of the events I absolutely love is we host 2 collegiate hackathons every year here in Austin at our technology center. We host it's called Battle of the Brains. We host an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution version, and we host an HBCU, Historically Black College and University version. And so we fill the building with these incredibly talented, knowledgeable college kids who are going on to CS degrees and business degrees and finance degrees. But they're always asking those of us who have been in the industry longer, like, what do I need to know? What's the thing that I'm not being taught in school about how the business operates or how to communicate with people? And I don't know, like having not taken the path of college either,
Yeah.
like I see the questions that they ask and I'm going like, I know they don't necessarily teach that in school, and I don't know that there's a solve for that either. It's one of those things that there's so much about this industry and about connecting with people that you just have to get your feet wet doing it. You have to go
Absolutely,
do it.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason that I asked is that I really do believe that in our industry, at least for when you and I came up, maybe we'll talk about it later. I mean, maybe in the age of AI, it's totally different now. But when you and I were coming up in this space, I mean, it really is an apprenticeship type situation. You learn everything by learning it from other people, good and bad, right? So I guess that brings me into the next question: is that you started out of high school, you started at startups, and obviously you can learn some habits in those environments that I don't know, like maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. So I guess tell us a little bit about what it was like to have that be your first working experience, and then obviously you've come a long way and now you're working at a very big corporation. So like how did you go from the startup environment to where you are now?
I think it taught me some really incredible qualities that I still live today, and maybe I don't consciously think about them as often as maybe I should. But the collectivism that we had a singular goal meant that everybody had to do things that were not necessarily in their job description, right? I was a IT support guy, but I also wrote code sometimes. Plus, I was sometimes the janitor that needed to grab
Sure.
the broom and clean up the work area. It really instilled this idea of like, if you see something, you need to take care of it, right? There's not going to be somebody that comes along that there's a job or a role for that and they do that. Like there was so much independent thinking,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
also like a lot of independent accountability. Everybody was counting on you to do your role, and there was no time for coaching or for the types of things that we maybe see in an enterprise or a large enterprise, right? And so a lot of that I carried along with me in my career is that like nobody is going to come take care of the thing that I see. I need to jump on that and take care of it. And that sense gave me opportunities throughout my career of saying like never close the door on an opportunity. If somebody comes along and says, I need help with something, like your first answer is yes. Even if you don't know how to do it, it's like I will
Yeah.
learn. I will find out.
I could not agree more strongly with what you just said. And it's funny because people, they ask me for advice over the years. And I feel like in our industry, my number one piece of advice is help solve problems and don't complain. I mean, it's like, I actually feel like, yes, there's lots more that goes into being a successful person in our business, but just the ability and the willingness to jump in and solve problems, it goes a long way for sure.
It is. And I like what you said about apprenticeship too, because you're right. That's how the industry grew. There was no generative AI we could turn to for coaching. There weren't even libraries of books and things that had been written on the topics that we were exploring, right? We were in startup space. By that, we were creating new things into the world that did not exist. So there was nowhere to turn but to people who knew the job better or knew the role better. Um, I will never forget one of the most formative experiences in my career was one of our startups had been acquired by a big company, by Nortel Networks. It's big Nortel Networks, big player in the Bay Area at the time. They had bought Bay and some other companies, and they bought us. And we were going through integration. And one of the folks who was assigned to us on the integration team looked at this young, by then probably 20 years old, IT technician and said, do you know anything about networking? And I said, no. He says, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about networking. And for the next 6 months, he took me under his wing. And I was the one on the CLI while he was telling me commands and explaining why we did the things. And he stood in front of the whiteboard and diagrammed things out. And I learned about BGP and LACP and all the network routing protocols and how to set up
Yep.
routers. And I got an education from a mentor, from a knowledgeable person that was probably, some of the highest quality stuff. I probably could not have gotten it from a book or a class because it was real world. It was tangible. It was
Absolutely.
something
Yeah, for sure.
this person had done for 20 or 30 years. And he gave back to, a youngster like myself. And that has stayed with me. I always said, like, when I become an enterprise architect, because that's what he was at the time, like, I'm going to dedicate time to do that. And it's actually one of the most favorite things about the role I have now.
Yeah, perfect. So, okay, so you were working at startups. You were
Yeah.
first doing IT things, then you were in
Yeah.
networking. I guess tell us a little bit more about the path that got you to where you are now.
Man, it's been, like I said, it's been just sort of stumbling into things through curiosity. Of course, at that time, there were bigger economic things going on. So dot-com bust came along. And I learned about how hard it was to hold on to those jobs, right? I had never been unemployed in my life. I was always in demand. Here was a kid who knew IT, who knew technology. Like, of course he was going to have a job. And then I find myself in 2001 with no prospects and lining up with hundreds or even thousands of other candidates looking for positions. So I have a lot of empathy for folks out there who are looking
Yeah.
right now, because it's
No,
tough.
it's tough.
And
Yeah, it is.
this industry, I will tell you, is cyclical. And those of us, you and me, Matt, who have lived through it a few times, we've seen these boom and bust cycles, and we know that it gets tough at times. That got me into just sort of roaming around, and I did contract work for a while, which is a typical path for folks in our industry as well. And I have a ton of appreciation for folks who do that work, because I was that guy for a while. I was the guy that the company leaned on that said, like, we have this skill, we need staff aug, go to a staffing agency, find somebody who knows this thing. I marginally knew it. They hired me and I got on. And then I started learning about the business that they were in. Turns out that business was a utility. Fascinating place to learn about legal and about regulatory systems. I still carry tons of lessons from that experience. I was there 7 or 8 years at the power company and learned about, being regulated by 8 different regulators and SOX and FERC and NERC and all of these systems, where you couldn't just sling changes into the environment. They had to be well orchestrated. They had to be well explained, and you had to have investment plans that made sense for the ratepayers. And that was a fantastic education for me as a technologist, because then I started to understand there are constraints on what we can do. And there are things that we have to, we have to do the paperwork right. We have to do our planning right. Started to learn about enterprise architecture and how we had to have roadmaps that led us to outcomes. Because you don't build a power plant overnight. You build it over a couple of years, and it's a 50-year investment, right? So learning about like long-term planning, regulatory, financial type of conditions, and being able to work within that environment and work effectively within that environment. That was another really formative experience.
Cool. And then I guess take us how you got into
forward.
your current. Well, yeah, I mean, just like yeah, how did you wind up at Home Depot? And I think really what I'm getting at is, you know, you have a background that a lot of, I guess you have attained a position that a lot of people would aspire to. And you've actually come from, not having gone to college and a bunch of other things. So I think it's a great story. And I think what I'm really just trying to understand for folks that are listening is, what's the path that got you to where you are now? And then obviously I want to talk about some of the interesting technology things that you're working on, but I just want folks to come away with, how did you wind up a distinguished engineer at Home Depot?
I know, and it's such a cool role. Like, if you would ask 19-year-old Dillon, like, what does he want to do in this world, in this technology world? Like, I'm right where I wanted to be. I always imagined, like, how do I affect big change in the world and big change in technology? And I feel like this is a marvelous position to be there. And I'm so thankful every day that I get to wake up and put on the orange apron for a brand that everybody loves and recognizes, and I can see our technology at work out in the stores. But yeah, the path to get to distinguished engineer or to enterprise architect, if you're out there, it's a path of just like innate curiosity, a level of intensity around the work, like being persistent, being just showing up every single day and being like, I am going to do this amazing thing. I think a lot of times we can feel a little bit powerless, whether you're listening to this and you're in a large company, or even in a small company, and you think, man, I got my role, but there's all this red tape out there. There's a hierarchy. There's an organizational structure. I try to remind myself and people, like, we are just individuals trying to work together here to create something amazing for each other. And when you boil it down to that simplicity, you can sit at your desk in the morning and go like, who do I need to connect with? Who are the humans that I need to work with to make this amazing thing happen? Oh, I've got an idea. I want to go bounce that off of somebody. I want to go prototype something. I want to go explore this new space. Like, all of those avenues are available to you regardless of what your title and the org structure is. And I think that that's something that between that and then just really focusing on the humans involved and giving back, like that's been the thing that's set me up for where I am today and where I might go in the future.
Super. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, then let's shift talking a bit more about your day-to-day focus right now. I mean, I have, as I've talked to more and more people, I've begun to learn, just how much technology permeates many businesses that, at least in, I don't know, in like some of the core like cloud, type businesses, you wouldn't assume, right? I mean, it's like, at least I'm going to admit, like, I was very naive how much technology is involved in retail and food service and like all banking, like all many vertical businesses. And I know for sure that technology permeates Home Depot in many places. So I don't know, would love to learn from you, just, I guess, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing right now? Or, some of the things that you've been working on over the past few years that have been most impactful to the business. Obviously, bonus points if there's anything in the mobile IoT space, but don't feel pressure to actually talk about that.
There's ton in the mobile
Yeah.
IoT space, and I'm sure we'll touch on it
Yeah,
throughout
sure.
the course. But like, what a time to be in this industry. And I'm not talking about just AI, but if you're a technologist, if you love what you do about this industry, when we always talked about, when I started in this industry, IT and technology was a cost center to the business. We were a toll of doing business. And I think with where we're turning the corner with the new AI, agentic AI capabilities, and having mobile in everybody's hands, and having the interconnectedness that we have, like, technology has exceeded any sort of like aspiring levels of synchronicity with the business. We're now core to the business. We're seen as an equal partner, and we are like, our planning has to come together with the business. So that's not just a Home Depot statement. I think that's a statement for everybody out there listening, is like, how do we shift in our industry from the really cool technology to talking about the really cool outcomes
I
that we're
agree. Yep.
creating with technology? Um, it's not enough just to have the coolest, AI agent on the block, but how is it helping somebody's life in a positive way? How is it improving an interaction with a customer, right? All those things come into play. And we've never had that sort of level of intensity and that level of intimacy with that customer connection as we do right now. And that's something that I'm super excited about where we find ourselves at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's most interesting to me about that is, I think you said something that resonates a lot with me, which is, we can spend a lot of time building technology for technology's sake, but it doesn't have
Yes.
any actual like business impact. It doesn't, I don't, again, I don't know what you're measuring. You're measuring something, whether it be customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction or something along those lines, or like revenue generated or something. But I guess my question for you, before we get into the specifics of the technologies, is, I would imagine, for what you can share, obviously you spend your time trying to figure out what are the things that you can work on that are going to move real business needles, right? And I guess, like, and I feel like some of these things, it can be very difficult to measure the impact until you implement them, but the implementation can be very costly, right? I mean, it's like, you're going to build some amazing new, I don't know, like mobile app thing for doing inventory or something. And it's like, you have to spend a lot of engineering before does it make anyone's life better, right? And like, in this physical world of like retail, it's not like you can A/B test something super quickly. I mean, you have to invest a lot. So I think my actual question is, when the costs of the technology investment, I would imagine, are very high for you. How do you think about what to invest in, basically?
Sure. It's it's a really good question, because you would love to invest in every great idea that's out there, and
Sure.
there is almost a limitless bucket of them. But remember, as a retailer, one of our core ideas is to deliver value to the customer, right? For Home Depot, that means being the lowest cost provider in home improvement. That way, you building your home, improving your life situation, you get the best value. You get the best products and the best value and the best services on top of that. So while I think one of the challenges for us as technologists, especially somebody in a DE role or an EA role, is trying to figure out before implementation how big of an impact it's going to have. Now, I think there's been a really positive change in our industry too, through the introduction of like product and UX and data science and artificial intelligence, that these all give us signals to help us make that decision as well. So we're getting feedback from our product teams, from our UX teams on how to improve, on what the customer experience looks like, on what the customer really wants. And then on the technology side, we're busy trying to figure out, okay, how do we make that real for the customer, for the associate, or for the person having to run that business process? What tools do we have on the shelf? We have a tremendous selection of technology and nearly a limitless one, whether you're a small company or a big company. One of the biggest roles I think somebody in this role can do is help reduce that solution space, right? So if you say, Matt, I want to go out and I want to develop a new agentic AI solution to interact with a customer. Well, great. There's 30, 40, 50, 100 different solutions in the market, I'm sure, that we could pick from. Part of the role is to say, okay, which ones align to our overall technology strategy best? Which ones do we have great partnerships with? Which ones do we think we have cost effectiveness with? What can we implement that fits within our operating model the best? And then we narrow that solution space down and we start saying, okay, let's iterate on that. Let's move fast on this, see if we can get a prototype out, see if something works, validate our assumptions, and bring our product and UX teams along with us for the ride. So it's a really great time in that we have all these tools available. I think it also creates a lot of work to say we've got to constrain the solution space because it's nearly infinite at times, and trying to get down to technology that's actually practical.
I was gonna, yeah. I mean,
effectively, right?
and it's just like even thinking about it from a customer perspective, like I can pitch you on the air that the thing that I want most from Home Depot or a store like that is I want to come in the door and I want the app to be a map for me and like take me to where the thing is that I need, because I'm sure, like many people, the amount of times that I've walked in circles, like looking for a particular thing, right? And my point more was that I'm sure you have a million ideas like that, right? Like that could improve the customer experience. And I just find it really interesting, like how you go about picking the things where, like, for me, again, speaking only for myself, if you had that, I would go to Home Depot over Lowe's every single time, right? Because that would make my life so much easier, because it's so hard to find stuff.
You are in luck because our app is second to none and has that map. And as somebody who was just working in the store a week ago, by the way, I gotta credit this. Like, one of the greatest things about the culture of Home Depot, and we didn't say this at the start, but I've been here 15 years now. Which is an incredible time in our industry and have grown with the company. But like, one of the reasons why this company is so amazing is the culture and the people. And part of that connection to the culture is every quarter I'm working a day in the store. So I was just down at my store 509 here in Austin, Texas, and worked my day on Friday. And my number one tool in the store is the Home Depot app, with the map, with the guide, with the AI assistants to say, hey, you're looking at this, you might want to consider these other things for your project as well. And massive kudos to our teams that have put that together as well, because that experience is second to none. But I think when you look at the technology that puts all of that together, I'll tell you one thing, Matt, when I started at Depot 15 years ago, I had no appreciation for how fast things move in consumer retail. I thought, man, I've been at startups. I know fast. I know iteration cycles. Retail is going to be a walk in the park. I walked in the door, and the technology here was moving incredibly fast, and the pace of innovation and the demand on the customer side, because exactly what you just said. Hey, if I have a terrible experience, I'm going to go to the other guys across the street, and that experience sticks with you. And so everything that I think that all of us retailers, not just Tipo, but anybody who works in the retail technology space, we're all trying to delight the customer. That is our end goal
for
with
sure.
all the technology. And we are behind the scenes wiring up everything we possibly can to create a delightful experience, an experience that you want to come back and you want to be in our stores, or you want to have that thing delivered to your front doorstep
Yeah,
same day, next day,
for
right?
sure. Yeah. So I guess along those lines, for what you can share, tell us about some of the big things that you've been working on over the past couple of years.
Yeah, the past couple of years at Depot has been really interesting, because we've been a leader in the space in what we call interconnected retail. And it's this idea that you as a customer, you have needs of the products that we sell, but you may want them delivered to you. You may be a pro and want them delivered to your job site. You may want to go curbside and pick it up in front of the store. You may want to walk into the store and have it ready for you, or you may just be browsing the aisles and you want to pluck something off. You could order that online. You could order it on your mobile app. You could order it while you're standing in the store. You could have your contractor order it on your behalf. There's this notion of, how do we transact with the customer and get them the right product that they need at the right time from any entry point? And when you think about the technology involved in doing that, really what we're doing is we're marrying capabilities across merchandising, logistics, front-end store operations, checkout, payments processing, online and digital, right? It is the ultimate sort of integration challenge, where you have really specialty, deep knowledge. I always marvel at my partners over in supply chain and logistics. They are incredible, both technologists and then data scientists and business practitioners of the logistics game. How do you get a product from a manufacturer onto a trailer, onto a train, into a supply warehouse, and then onto a shelf? It's magic. But what we have to do on the technology side is figure out how to connect that to, say, you trying to order that part. So it's a massive web of integration challenges. And I think that's been one of the most satisfying things over the last several years, is that we've put in place technologies and standards and practices that have allowed us to have that interconnected experience. It was a massive change for the organization, and one that we worked on, intently as a team, from enterprise architecture down to a software engineer one, to be able to create reasoned connections between all of these systems, so that you, the customer, have an incredible experience.
What is I'm just curious, like from a technology perspective, what does that mean? Like, is it connecting systems that have been siloed in the past and having a shared data model, or like, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to map that to what were the technical changes that actually happened
What were the
there?
big unlocks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the big unlocks there was a massive effort to sort of bring disparate data sources together. You can imagine, we're not just a large retailer, but we're also an older retailer. We've been
Yep.
around 47,
Sure.
48 years
Yeah.
at this point. And so systems have grown up and evolved over time, but usually within their domains, right? And lots of innovation happens in a domain, but we have to integrate between domains. So you're right. A lot of the innovation that happened over the course of that several years was focused on bringing together master data sources, getting things consolidated. So instead of having 8 different ideas of who a customer was, we had one. Instead of having, a store-based catalog and an online-based catalog, we have a singular catalog of SKU information, so that we could sell anything, anytime, anywhere to you. A lot of this was enabled clearly through cloud, and we were able to expand our presence in cloud and use the growth in that technology as it was coming up. My particular piece in this was We built an edge platform that I'm particularly proud of, and proud of the team that put that together, that is running in the back of all of our stores, that helps power those experiences and gets data out to the edge, and makes those experiences come to life in real time. But it's one of these things where you have to stand back and you have to look at the overall business architecture and the technology architecture and start putting in place, like we said, well-standard APIs, bringing data sources together into singular data sources, putting in place standards and practices for the organization, consolidating around platform and platform mindset. These are all elements of like
for sure.
transformational change.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a pretty gnarly data problem. So I would imagine it took a long time to figure out. I don't know. It's like how to normalize various schemas and IDs, and I don't know.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, in this industry, right, we always use the analogy of like changing the tires while the car is going down the road,
right.
and it's that, but it's at a level of, just 2,300 stores across North America all have to open and close at the right time.
Yeah.
And there's, I will say, another like transformational effort within the organization, and huge credit to everybody who's been involved, but a focus on reliability engineering.
Yeah.
A practice that came out of the cloud, and as you and I came up through this industry, RE went from being like this interesting thing that Google did to an industry standard practice. And I think as we adopted it at an enterprise level, we saw the benefits of that flywheel of saying, like, if we focus on reliability engineering and that as a skill and a task and something to be done, we see the availability of our systems go up, and we see the security of them go up, and we understand and can reason about them better. So that's been a huge advancement for us over the last few years as well.
Yeah, you had mentioned before that apart from the data migration issues and those types of things, that you had also invested in some mobile app and IoT and that space. I'd love to. I mean, again, like I see it obviously from customer apps and the people that work at the stores walking around with apps and everything else. But I don't know, would love to learn more about that you can share of what you've been doing in that space as well.
Mobile is increasingly the way that customers connect with us. We're seeing massive growth in the digital channel. And I think, whether it's Home Depot or other companies, like everybody is seeing this. We all want to work off our phones. I want to work off my phone every day. And some of the really great innovations there that have happened more recently. I mean, there was an article, an announcement we put out in the last month talking about how pros can now see the status of their deliveries through the app. Now, that seems fairly benign, right? But it's actually a massive improvement. If you're a pro sitting out on a job site and you've asked for a product to be there at a particular time, we can show you on a map exactly where that truck is, and it's rolling out to you, and you don't have to, it takes the anxiety level down. You have confidence that Home Depot is there for you and is delivering the product. And it's things like store mode in the app as well. That I mentioned when I was on my store day last week. Like, that's my survival guide. That's my hitchhiker's guide to the galaxy, the universal knowledge of everything. Store mode in the app is really a capability that came about because we saw that we needed to have a focused experience as people were in the store and give them what they were looking for, which was maps.
Yeah, I mean, now I feel like I'm going to go and I'm going to check out store mode this weekend because I'm very curious about it. I did not even know that existed. I don't know. Like, I actually feel like when you walk in, there should be a giant sign that says you are missing out on store mode download.
That's right. Store mode is fantastic. And I think the thing with the mobility aspect of it is just going to continue to evolve, like, and pack more and more capabilities in there. One that came, so hobby time, right? On the side, we do some renovation work on our home, like everybody does, right? And so I have a Home Depot Pro Extra account. So one of the great things about that is we introduced a capability called HD Pass, which is I can send somebody down to the store and they can pull up the pass on their phone that works for me and is delegated the responsibility to say like, oh, I'm picking this up, scan the HD Pass. I don't have to send my credit card with them or any payment
Yeah.
details. It's just like roll in, scan the pass that goes on my account, and they walk out with the product they need to continue the job. Delivering for the pros through the app is a big focus of Depot, and you're just seeing more and more innovations come every day along those lines.
Yeah. So I guess now we'll get into the topic that's really near and dear to my heart for obvious reasons is, I mean, I would imagine that from the stores, from all of these things, I mean, the amount of data that you must be generating, I mean, it just must be absolutely tremendous. I mean, just the amount of telemetry that's possible. So I guess I have two questions. You know, one is, you know, like in a perfect world, cost doesn't matter, and we just ingest all the data that we can, and we can query it instantly. Obviously, that's not the world that we live in. So I guess my question for you is two parts. You know, one, how do you think about, you know, what do you measure, right? Like, what are you looking at, and how do you making sure that you're getting value out of the different types of data that you're actually collecting? And then I guess since you talked about reliability, I'd love to understand a bit more, like what data are you collecting? How do you think about reliability of all these systems? And you're dealing with, in my opinion, really complicated distributed systems because you have, I'm sure you have servers that run in the store, you have like mobile endpoints, you have cloud systems, all of these things. I mean, it's very interesting. So I guess for what you can share more just on the architecture side and like how you, I don't know, how you think about putting this together and having it be reliable and all of those pieces would be really interesting.
I'll talk about some of the principles. That way we don't
Sure.
get too deep into like the
Yeah.
inside. But you talk about measurement, and I think this is something. I'll talk about the edge since that's an area that we've recently been investing in. Talked about we built an edge platform, and we've shared some of the details about that at recent conferences and the like. Um, that's, you know, it's a constrained environment, right? So very analogous to a mobile experience, very analogous to a system that's maybe out in the field. The edge has a lot of constraints around it, and so you're right. Like if we had unlimited bandwidth and unlimited cost, we would just sling all the metrics and all the tracing all the time. But that's not the reality that we live in. The bandwidth and the capacities really needs to be reserved for serving up business capabilities, for serving the customers, right? Um, so when I think about measurements, like we're constantly on the search for how do we measure what matters
Yeah.
more than just measure all the things, and that's how we think about our edge experience. So we've put in place technology that allows us to do like summarization at the edge and looks for certain signals at the edge so that we're not sending full fidelity traces and metrics all the way up the pipeline. We're sending the things that really matter as signals up the pipeline. And I think that's something that principally helps you when you think about design is that you have constraints in the environment, and those force you to make tough decisions that oftentimes lead to a much more efficient outcome. I'm not sure that I would, yeah, or I am sure that I would use the same principle as I went to the cloud and the data center as well, because it's just a fantastic principle that says like only ship what really matters to
Yeah.
you.
What I find so interesting about this space is that in the cloud, because you know, bandwidth is quote free, and you know, it's like things are on all the time. It's so, we make it so easy for people to generate copious amounts of data. But I agree. In the edge world, there are real physical constraints that prevent that. So you have to learn a mindset, you know, that is different. And I agree that it would be great if we could apply some of these learnings to our cloud systems. But I don't think as an industry
Well,
we are there yet.
look, like the metric has no value if it's just noise, if it's just a metric that nobody ever looks at. And I don't really like, it doesn't matter where in the modal or in the space you're operating, edge cloud, data center, far edge, whatever it might be. um, if nobody's looking at the metric, like why are we collecting it?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's it's really a discussion on value. Does it, it's the Marie Kondo, does it bring you joy? Is it something that you can look at, or that an AI can look at, or that a system, an automated system can look at and determine some idea of health? And that gets to your other point where you talk about reliability, like making sure that the metrics that you're collecting are tuned to either some outcome around reliability, some outcome around customer experience. They're really driven by, we need to collect X because it will help us solve Y for our customer. And I think that's a universal idea of, like, we need to be, like you said, solutions over technology. I need to collect those metrics because I'm on the hunt to provide a better refresh rate on a mobile app. I need to collect this metric because I need to understand why my server is going down in the middle of the night, right? Like, it doesn't matter what sort of space you work in, working from the problem backwards, working from the, what is the outcome I'm trying to get to, that will lead you to what metrics you need to correct or collect and analyze. And then if you don't have an answer for that, throw it away. Like, if you're not looking at it and it doesn't bring you joy and it doesn't bring you value, like, maybe you can still collect it. And we do this on the edge as well. Hey, collect it and store it for 7 days. If we find a use for it, great, it's there. But, like, it's going to get groomed and it's going to cleaned up, and it's just better for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's also true that when you're in firefighting mode, like, you need signal out of the noise,
Yep.
right? And so if you reduce the amount of noise at the ingest point, you're going to be able to find the signals a lot more clearly.
It's just so hard to have that discipline. And again, like, I realize that I'm extremely biased, but
Sure.
I think that in the future world, the more that we can dynamically, allow us to turn things off and on, and all of the benefits that come from that, I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility. But anyway, as we get towards wrapping up, I would love to pick your brain a bit about what excites you the most right now. And you don't have to say AI. You can say AI. It's entirely up to you. But I don't know. Just like would love to learn from you. What are the technology trends that you're tracking the most right now? That you think are going to be the most impactful moving forward.
I mean, if I say AI, like, is that too generic? Well,
sorry, if you,
well, I'll say, like, it's AI, but it's not, maybe not for the reason that you think. And
I was going to say, like, you can say AI, but I'd love you to be more specific if you can, because I think it's such a broad category.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to relate it to a junior engineer that I was talking to a couple weeks ago, and they are somebody who just started in this industry, 2021, I think. So, right, we were creating a lot of software engineers at that time, and everybody needed software engineers. And they came to me and they said, Dillon, are we cooked? Like, do I need to go find a different career? Like, software engineering's kind of done at this point because of AI. And I thought deeply about it, and my conclusion, at least right now, is no. Actually, this is a fantastic time to be in this industry.
Absolutely.
This is one of the most amazing times I've had in my life in this industry. And I think it's for this reason that AI is enabling us to have a Rosetta Stone, in a way, between the English or the human language and code. Code was always its own language. Code was locked behind the mind of practitioners, right? You had to be that translator. You had to take business requirements and turn them into code and create that model of the world. And what some of the generative AI tools that are out there now is unlocking the ability for someone who does not know code to create some tangible thing. Now, it may not be the final thing, but even getting that far, even getting that connection to say, can you show me what you're talking about? Can you show me a prototype? I have this idea. I went to an AI model. I said, mock it up for me, and then show that to a technologist and say, can you help me scale this? Can you help me build this robustly? Can you help me make this reliable? I think is actually a fantastic thing for our industry. I think it's going to drive a lot of innovation and a lot of really positive thought into the industry. And it's going to allow our software engineering teams to be involved in new ideas, in ideas that connect to outcomes much more closely than maybe ever in the time that I've worked in this industry. So I'm super excited about that. I'm trying to figure out today, how to get these tools in the hands of more people. I want the idea of somebody who's sitting at their desk right now with the next brilliant, $10 billion idea for our company. I want them to be empowered with the tools to make that idea into something that then as a technology organization, we can take it, scale it, make it robust for the organization. And we all welcome this brand new thing into the world together.
Yeah. I mean, I am with you. We could have a whole other podcast on this. I just, there are so many open questions right now for me around, I don't think the cost of these tools right now is real. So I think there's cost aspect of it. I am fearful about the amount of code that we're generating right now where the debt is going to come due in a few years, just in terms of technical debt, and people don't understand it. But at the same time, I'm a daily user of these tools. Like, they are very useful. So I think I'm with you. I mean, I think it's a great time to be in technology. I think we'll need as many engineers as we ever did, actually, probably to clean up a lot of the mess that we're making right now. But that's a whole separate topic.
Look, today's vibe code is tomorrow's legacy.
You're right.
That's fine, right? Like, that's okay. It's part of the natural progression of this industry. And as long as we just recognize that and we understand that this is not the end times, it's the beginning of a new cycle. How exciting it is that we can finally unlock some capabilities to say, like, there's that crusty old system in the corner, but guess what? Like, it would have taken me months to build an integration with that crusty old system and build an API that's safe on top. And now I can do that much more quickly. Well, great.
Sure.
Now I've unlocked an additional capability for the business and we can move faster together. Is it perfect? No. It needs a technologist to come in, polish it up, make it scalable, robust. But man, it gets us so much further down the road than we could have done on our own.
Cool. All right, Dillon, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining. I think this was a great conversation. I think people will really enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
So that's a wrap for this episode of Beyond the Noise, Signals, Stories, and Spicy Takes. Huge thanks to Dillon for joining and sharing his story. You can find this episode and all past ones on the BitchIF YouTube channel. And if you had fun, drop us a review, tell your friends, or yell your favorite hot take into the void, and just make sure to tag us. I'm Matt Klein, and I will see you next time. Thank you.